Somewhere in Vestiaire Collective's help pages is a sentence almost nobody reads. It says, "We cannot accept items listed for sale for less than £14. Not, "We'd rather you didn't," cannot. A resale platform has published the exact price below which it thinks the whole exercise stops being worth doing. And on that platform's own fees, a seller who lists at exactly £14 receives £1. £10 of fixed selling fee, £3 of a minimum payment processing, 13 of 14 goes to the platform. The seller keeps 7% of their own sale. This is not a scandal, it's an honest endpoint of a fee structure with a flat charge in it applied to something cheap. That line, £14, turns out not to be one platform being fussy. It describes something true about the entire UK second-hand market, and a great deal about what is in your wardrobe right now. First, why the line sits there. Vestiaire charges UK sellers a fixed £10 on anything under £83 and 12% above it. On top of either sits a £3 payment fee with a £3 minimum. So the floor underneath every sale is £13. £14 then is not arbitrary. It is roughly the smallest number at which the platform can still take its fee and still hand you a coin. At 13, the seller gets nothing. The minimum listing price is the fee structure wearing a hat. Watch what a fixed fee does as the price climbs. At £14, the platform's cut is 93% of a sale. At 83, 15.6. At 250, 15. The percentage collapses by a factor of 6, and nothing about the platform's costs change. There's a strange step in there too. List at £82.99, pay to £10 flat fee, take home £69.99. List a penny higher and you cross the 12% and take home £70 and 4 pence. Asking 1 penny more earns you 5 pence more. Flat fees do that. Vestiaire is the easy target here because it publishes all of this plainly. The more interesting question is whether other platforms have the same flaw and simply don't print it. Vinted charges private sellers nothing. Its fee lands on the buyer, and its own price list calls it out as a percentage plus a fixed charge, usually 3 to 8% plus 30 to 80 pence. Take the middle of that published range, 5% plus 70 pence, and run it across the market. On a £2 item, the fee is 40% of the price. On the median second-hand item, 8.8. On a £250 item, 5.3. Same formula, same day, the rate depends almost entirely on how cheap your thing is. eBay's version has the same slope. 10 pence flat, then 7% of the first £20, 4% of the next chunk, 2 above that, baked into the price you see rather than added at the checkout. The flat part is only 10 pence, it still bends the curve. 12% of a £2 item, 7.5 of the median, 4.3 of a £250 one. Gentler than Vinted's curve because the flat part is smaller, but the same direction of travel. And to be fair to all of them, this isn't a trick. Processing a payment and answering a complaint costs roughly the same whether the item is worth £4 or £400. A flat fee is an honest way to charge a fixed cost. It is simply, unavoidably regressive. That's not an accusation, it's just the arithmetic. So, the fees lean hardest on the cheap end. How much of the market is the cheap end? Here our own data starts talking. 80,154 UK research second-hand prices. In good condition, the median item is worth £18.50. The average is £71.69, nearly 4 times higher, because of a handful of expensive things drag it up. The average describes almost nobody. Spread it out and the shape is unmistakable. A tenth of the market is worth £4.25 or less. A quarter, £8 or less. The middle, £18.50. You have to reach the top 10% before you hit 155. That is not the market for handbags, it's the market for tops. So put Vestiaire's line back into it. Of all 80,154 price points, 35,292 sit below £14, 44%. Nearly half of everything we've priced is worth less than the minimum one major platform will let you list. Narrow to good condition, the state most things are in when someone decides to sell, and it's 41.1%. 6,593 configurations of 16,031. 2/5 of the wardrobe below the line. You might assume that this is the battered end of the market. It isn't. Take every item brand new, tags attached, never worn. 18.2% are worth less than £14. Almost 1 in 5 things in the best condition possible already below the line. And then condition does what condition does. New with tags, 18.2% below the line. Good, 41.1. Poor, 73.7. It tracks the value itself. The median item is worth £38 new with tags, $18.50 in good condition, and £5 at poor. By the time an ordinary thing has been used properly, 3/4 of the market sits underneath the cheapest listing Vestiaire will accept. Which brings me to the part I find genuinely difficult. Ask someone to name the thing that they most obviously ought to resell, and a great many will say the same: children's clothes. Outgrown rather than worn out, often barely used, expensive when new, and replaced every few months by construction. In good condition, the median girls' clothes item in our data is worth £4.50. Boys £4, baby and unisex £4.38. The share of those categories below £14 line, 93, and 90%. The most reusable category of clothing there is, almost entirely beneath the floor. And it isn't only kids' clothes. The everyday middle of the adult wardrobe sits right on top of the line, wobbling either side of it. Tops and t-shirts, median £11, 57% below 14. Jeans, £12.50, 56% below the line. Dresses do better at £17, but still put 45% of themselves under. These are the 3 things most likely to be in a bag by the front door. What clears the line is a short, predictable list: the bulky and the branded. Coats, median, £33.50, 22% below. Trainers, £39, under 10%. Handbags, £250, 9%. If resale feels like it works for you, there's a decent chance it's because these are the categories you happen to own. And underneath every fee structure sits a cost of none of them control. A physical object has to cross the country. The cheapest published rate a private sender can send in the UK is £2.62. A parcel dropped at one shop, collected at another. £2.62 whether the box holds a vest or a Birkin. 481 configurations in our data, 3% are worth less in good condition than the cost of posting them. Stack that on that £4 children's jumper. The typical vintage buyer fee is 92p. The cheapest postage, £2.62. £3.54 of the cost of an item is worth £4.50. 79% on top of the price, and the postage alone is more than half of what the thing is worth. Nor is that a freak case. For 13.8% of everything we've priced in good condition, better than 1 item in 8, the cheapest postage costs more than the item's value. 2 caveats, and both cut slightly against me. First, the bottom of this market is the part we measure least precisely. Our prices are research bands, and every figure today is a midpoint. Below £14, those bands run relatively wide, averaging 76% of their own midpoint against 60% above the line, and more of them are generic rows with no brand attached. Treat the exact percentages as the shape of the thing, not a measurement to 2 decimals. Second, the kids category are small samples, 125 to 136 prices each. The gaps are too big to be noise, but the precise numbers shouldn't be leaned on. And the biggest caveat, this dataset holds prices, not outcomes. There's no field in here for what it sells, or how fast, or how often things get listed. So I can tell you that sometimes an item is worth less than it costs to move it. I can't tell you what people actually do about that, and won't pretend otherwise. What the numbers do say though is Vestiaire isn't being snobbish, it's just being explicit. Every platform has this flaw sitting quietly in its fee table. Vestiaire just printed it. And the flaw isn't really about the fee structures, it's about the objects. Because if moving one item costs £2.62, whether it's a Primark vest or a Birkin, it leaves the question the £1 sale opened with. When it costs nearly as much to send as the thing is worth, is that the market failing, or is it simply what a £4 item is?